Our final speaker today was someone who, in fact, caused a number of things to lock into place for me. As you can imagine, looking at this story, understanding this history, you're inescapably close to fire, and you get hot and you can get burnt. In fact, trying to reconcile the loss of the building, trying to reconcile what occurred has been a constant issue within the project. Working and speaking to Oliver Costello, who will be speaking to us, is someone who, in fact, really, I guess, awakened a whole number of suspicions I had about the fire, and ideas I had about the fire. And I've really been enjoying some of our late night chats that we've been having. But Oliver's a Bundjalung man from the North Coast. He initiated and continues to lead projects, which I encourage you all to look at online, Firesticks. But he also works as a project officer, Aboriginal heritage officer for the National Parks and Wildlife Services. And it's an interesting role that, in fact, and it's one of those ideas that we've been talking about a long time, trying to juggle this double-edged sword, which I think much of the conversation that Kim and Gary just started to line up for us, this very double-edged sword of how we manage country and how we move forward through country. And the other key idea that we've talked about is how country remembers things and how community remembers country. So I'd like to welcome Oliver to the stage to talk about cultural burns.
I'd just like to start by acknowledging country. This country, and I guess all the country that I've stepped on and that I will step on in the future, I think it's really important that wherever we go, we know the sense of responsibility and obligation that we have to the place where we step. So I'd like to thank this country and the elders past, present and future of this country, and those of everyone here today as well. I was going to say something else when everyone stood up as well, which was when you do stand up, have a think about why you're here now and where you're going, and thank you for being here. As Jonathan said, yeah, I'm a Bundjalung man from, which way we go? Wrong way. I'm a Bundjalung man from the Northern Rivers of New South Wales. This is not far from where I was born, in Byron Bay, and it's so important to understand our place in country, our responsibilities to country and our connections to country. And it's so important to have people in that landscape as well. That's where we belong, knowing our responsibility to place. The other thing I was going to say is that I'm one of those guys that when he goes to pack his bag, he just throws everything in and pulls a few things out and worries about the things that he hasn't packed in his bag. And this presentation is much like that. So there's a few things I probably want to skim through, but this one is not one of them. This is me trying to articulate a little bit about what are cultural values, and this is what cultural values are to me. This is my daughter Charlie. Charlie means trees in Bundjalung, and she's standing next to her tree, a black bean tree, boogum, we call it in Bundjalung. And the seed of that tree comes from my tree. My placenta's planted under my tree, and her placenta's planted under her tree. And that's not necessarily a Bundjalung story, but there's Bundjalung stories about that girl's name, about that tree and about that place, and that's my story. And that's partly what cultural values are. They're our stories and the stories that we share with each other that build a sense of identity and community. It's also looking into the valley where I grew up, and so much of my around walking, swimming, hunting, fishing, playing in those creeks and rivers, and understanding my responsibilities and my connections to place. So, that moment, that picture, to me has so much value. But to others, maybe it's just a lovely little story and a pretty girl. But we have these different ways of understanding values, and it's really important that we understand how to share them with each other. I'm going to talk about Firesticks a little bit, or mainly. And I guess, to me, it's a long story, and everyone's probably tired, and I won't bore everyone with all the little bits and pieces. I'll just try and highlight some of the journey. And cultural learning pathways to diversity of fire is my way of, I guess, understanding what Firesticks is about. It's about how do we empower country? How do we build that sense of responsibility on country that the old people had? The way that they looked after it, they protected it, and they promoted, you know, the abundance and the increase of nature. And so how do we build that story? And so, you know, we focus a lot on fire and we talk about lighting fires and stuff, but really it's about people and about their connection to place and about how we build recognition of that purpose and how we vitalise that practice. You know, like I didn't learn a lot about fire as a young Bundjalung man. I've learnt more about fire as I've grown older and because of the lack of fire in the landscape. I've been intrigued by that and I've gone through a journey of understanding. So like what are values and practices of cultural fire? Like what can we learn from it? And fairly common, people understand a fairly common event, someone being warmed or smoked to country. So this is a cultural fire. This is, you know, a campfire that, you know, we've put some leaves on and, you know, to cleanse and to welcome people to country. And this is a big fire meeting, big fire ceremony for traditional welcoming them, you know, a Dharawal man, you know, a fireman from New South Wales coming up to Cape York to share knowledge and learn about fire. That's one of the campfires. We've also got, you know, fires where you're sitting around yarning, telling stories about, you know, football, you know, culture, you know, whatever. Places that bring people together. And there's a diversity of fire in that we need to understand what type of fire we're trying to create for that purpose. You know, how many mob are there? How many people are there? How big does the fire want to be? What's the weather like? How hot is it? How cold is it? Are we trying to warm people? Are we just trying to illuminate for people? Like, what do we do by the fire? Like, all these questions around cultural fire are questions about that. They're not so much about the way people interpret fire now as this, you know, power that, you know, destroys and you've got to burn this way, you've got to burn that way. You've got to burn for country, you've got to burn for people, you've got to burn for that place. You've got to understand what type of fire you need to light, whether it's a smoky campfire to cook on, campfire to tell stories, a landscape fire. Same fires, different meanings, different values. Here's one of those fires. This is my daughter and my son and my nephew up in Arnhem Land, or near Arnhem Land there. And my camping, and she just said, I didn't prompt her. She just said, oh, we're going to light the grass around the camp there and burn off. And then the kids are dancing and playing, you know, in the dust. And, you know, that's what it's about. It's about people on country. It's about, you know, and this is where kids learn about fire, burning around their camp. That's when kids learn about fire. And today, kids aren't allowed to be there. They're not allowed to learn about fire. Where are their helmets? Where are their... She doesn't have a shirt on. They got no shirts on. Like, and they're only a meter, and they're lighting the fire too, all these kids. Like, they're learning about that fire and they're respecting that fire. And kids can't do that today legally. And we have to ask ourselves that question. Why? Why can't we teach our kids about fire the right way, about, you know, the cultural way, how to learn how to protect themselves and understand their rights and responsibilities? Here's another burner I was on. And I really love this photo, and I show it because I see the spirit in this fire. I see the ancestors talking to each other, working out which way they're going to go. I think it's really powerful. This is what that fire looked like the next day when the fire just stopped right here. See the green grass and the dry there. Why don't do that? No water trucks, no water. Just went out right there. Because it was cultural fire. What kind of fire was this? You know, and I think it's a real question, and we've talked about it. And to me, I see the elements of cultural fire in it. But the thing that I struggle with, and it's only because I don't know, and it doesn't mean that it's not so, is I'm not sure about the intent of the fire. Who lit the fire? Why did the fire occur? Because cultural fires have intent, they have cultural intent. Whether they're of the lightning people to teach us lore about country, that's how we learn about fire, from sky people and birds. Birds are a story, tell a story about fire. They teach us about fire. When we don't look after country, that's what fire we get. Hot fire, rip through your country. And that lightning will keep telling us that story. It'll keep teaching us that story when we don't learn from that country. And our old people, they learnt those stories. They learnt that. And those stories are still being told. Anyone that says that oh, you know, we've lost that knowledge. Well, why do the fires keep happening? You know, the knowledge is still there. The stories are still telling us. This is one of the ways that we imagine Firesticks. We talk about what it means, the symbolism of it, you know. The original, when we sort of started this whole concept of Firesticks, you know, there was sort of two meanings to Firesticks. One is the kind of cliche, you rub two sticks together and you make fire, and Firesticks farming and that. But the other one was about message sticks. It was about how do we communicate this to people. Like, everyone sort of has a basic understanding of Aboriginal fire, but yet most people struggle with the complexity of what it means whenever they stand in any landscape, and they don't realise what it means. And so we need to bring people together. So this is about together and creating a framework for people to have space to understand how to work together. We're not just throwing everyone in a room and fighting it out. We're sort of saying, come into the space, respect the space, learn your place, and you'll have freedom in that. And it's very much the same as this whole, I might have slides on it, but I'll just freestyle it. But this idea of country, the fact that we have all these people, plants, animals, places, they all have connections and responsibilities to each other. And we need to understand what they are. Otherwise, we get upset or we get sick and we have this imbalance. So we need to see people as country, country as people. We need to see trees and the trees in us, the plants, the animals. We need to see that relationship to each other because they're all different clans, different mobs. And when you come into someone else's country and you don't respect that place, you don't step and understand and acknowledge that step in that place and pay that respect to that place, you're essentially a weed. And you'll get upset, maybe they'll get upset, people get upset. How do we find that space where we understand that we're supposed to be there and we're providing a space for each other to understand how to learn and grow and share? And these are some of the ways we've been trying to think about it. So responsibility, ensure the right people are involved in planning and implementing fire based on their connections to land. Don't just go and have meetings without the people that belong there, you know, and how many meetings are happening right now and have happened and will happen where the right people aren't being invited or involved, and it just keeps happening. You know, teaching young people and passing down knowledge. That's what it's all about. That's our responsibility. That's the reason we're here. We're all here for that reason. Being on country, learning by observation and sharing. You've got to be on country. You know, you've got to be there. You've got to physically be present and understand and be connected to places. Otherwise, you won't understand. And we've got to build recognition. We've got to embed this cultural connection within contemporary natural resource management. We need people to understand how to look after country because at the moment it's not happening. We need to build that responsibility into everybody to understand. And it goes beyond land management. It's about people being on country and looking after it. We need to implement good training, strong partnerships and on-ground practices, appropriate techniques. This is some work that Miles Holmes and I and others, lots of rangers and stuff, we kind of, through a series of workshops and yarns and stuff, we kind of came up with a whole heap of things about why people want to burn. Like, why do you want to burn? Because you just like fire, or, you know, why do you want to burn? And workshop lots of different ideas and collate them and put them together into these broad themes which cross over each other. And the ones across the top have got the most stars out of that meeting. And I think it's always really interesting to see that pretty much, you know, the most important things aren't about fire risk, you know. They're not typical things people think about fire management, to hand down knowledge to the next generation. That's why most of the people wanted to be in that meeting, wanted to be there that day, to learn knowledge for their kids. They wanted to look after important species and habitat. They wanted to fulfil a responsibility to look after country. And they wanted to facilitate the cycle of healthy people, healthy country. They want to look after themselves. And the only way to do that is to look after their country. And they want to learn from that country. You know, it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have of country, you're learning from it. You've got to adapt. The way that our old people burnt 1,000 years ago, 2,000, 30,000, 200 years, 10 years, 2 years, yesterday, all different. Same place, different adaptation of that knowledge. You've got to learn from that country. This is some of the work that we've been doing, you know, trying to pass on knowledge. Like, so much of the fire knowledge in Australia and the world comes from Indigenous knowledge and practice. A lot of it's moved away from that knowledge and practice, and that's where some of it's gone wrong. It needs to come back to that place. It needs to come back to that sense of intent and responsibility. We need our people to fire stick, you know. They're the only ones that should be wielding it. They need to hand that knowledge on to the next generations. We need to learn from country. Here's Marcus Ferguson, a guy I've worked with for years, you know, like just when he hits the ground, he's just on country, he's present. He knows his way around, you know. And we need those people. You know, that's how you learn from country. You have people to facilitate exchange. You've got to sit there for a long time, for years and years, or you've got to work with someone that's done it. You've got to have that relationship, either with country or people. And our old people have spent thousands of years passing that knowledge on through us, through knowledge and story, and through our genetics. Unlock that. Look after the species and habitats. One of the key things that I've been spending a fair bit of time on lately is, and it was great hearing some of the stories today, I feel so humbled to be here and be able to share the stage of, you know, so much wisdom and knowledge that's been passed today and through my lifetime. And one of the things that I've been learning about more and more is these cultural pathways or song lines or whatever you want to call them. And for fire, they're really interesting because they're these places that connect us. They're the places that we walk. They're the places that we gather and have, you know, camp and have ceremony. You know, we need to maintain, and lots of the landscape appearing, we need to bring them back because that's how we can do landscape fire. We actually have to maintain our pathways and we have to burn along those pathways and in between and make sure the country's healthy. And this is up in the Bunya Mountains, and the Murray Ranger team are up there trying to restore these native grasslands that their old people maintained for thousands of years, and they've been able to get back on country and start to bring them back. And I don't know if people know about the Bunya ceremonies, but the big ceremony where people would come from a long way to share ceremony from, you know, Bunjalung people further south, and people tell me stories of knowledge and artefacts coming from all over to end up at this really important law place. So these rangers have a really important responsibility to maintain this cultural landscape. And the way that they need to do it is they need to burn these grasslands and they need to protect that rainforest where the bunya lives, because the bunya is such an important species there, but so is the grassland. They need to find that relationship balance, that kinship between that country. They need to find that responsibility and exercise it. So it's really, you know, important to understand that. And one of the stories that we were talking about when we were having our yarns was I was up at the Bunya Mountains recently. I've been going up there for years trying to support them and learn, and there's this knowledge exchange, this Indigenous mentorship approach that me and my colleagues use, where we want to learn from each other and we want to build this the same way, you know, when I'm going there, just like my ancestors did, to go and learn and tell stories and understand law and knowledge, you know. I've been doing that in a contemporary setting, getting in a car instead of walking. You know, how clever were those old people to walk 1,000 and survive in all this country they'd never been in before. You know, to walk through that country, you've got to be really clever. You don't have a motor car, no fridge, you know, it's knowledge. It's really deep knowledge and politics, you know, to get through that country, to walk through that country, know your song lines, know every step you take is the right one. And one of the things we were talking about, that wasn't it, was we're up there and they had to do a smoking ceremony, and the old fella comes to do his smoking ceremony, and I had some fire sticks there, and I said, oh, you want to use the fire sticks? And he sort of looked at me, I got a lighter, mate, you know. Fair enough. But I didn't stop there. And I said to the young fellas, you know, like, got fire sticks here, do you want to make a fire? You know, I was just teaching things earlier about how to make fire. And then, you know, and that persistence, that sense of I could just step back and not participate, or I could step forward and offer something. And I kept on offering it politely and respectfully, you know. And the old fella said, yeah, let's use the fire sticks. Them fellas want to use the fire sticks. And then suddenly they're making fire. They're making a sacred fire there. And that's why I'm here. That's why we're here, because we want to put our first foot forward. We want to try and create that space for people to grow and learn. And one of the young fellas said, I've never made fire before. And he just made fire for that ceremony, you know. Yeah, so to facilitate the cycle of healthy people, healthy country, and to feel responsible to look after country. This photo is interesting because this is a Soteria, which is a weed, grass weed. We've got the rangers managing it, and people often sort of have this whole question, oh, well, how does Indigenous knowledge apply to weeds? Weeds weren't here. And what's cultural about burning a bunch of weedy grass? You know, and my answer is, well, that's colonisation 101. Them weeds have taken over that country, and these people, that's their country, Banjalang mob. That's their country, and they need to decolonise that land, and at the same time as they're doing that, they're decolonising themselves. But wait, there's more. the technology that you use to do that is exactly the same as if they were native species in the wrong place, them cheeky ones. There's all these cheeky ones everywhere. It doesn't matter whether they've come from across the sea or they've come from your own family, that we're everywhere. And sometimes we're cheeky and sometimes we're not. And we need to understand how to support each other, to not be cheeky and to know our place and pull each other in. And that's what the Beenylang mob are doing right here. They're fulfilling their cultural responsibility to look after their country, maintain that of that country, and at the same time, they're decolonising that landscape, that country. Here's a bit of what fire means to me and to Firesticks, and this is some stuff that me and my colleagues, Jacqueline Goth and Victor Stephenson and Santolio and others, workshopping these ideas when we're setting up Firesticks and about what does it mean. And you know, fire illuminates life and maintains culture with kinship, pathways, ceremony, medicine, food, warmth, and all, a law, and above all, a law taught the people. It taught, we're just this reciprocal process of learning, the lightning people, the birds, the land, like it's all story and it's all law and we need to maintain it. We must respect this as inherited responsibility to be passed on in our changing world. It's always changing. We've got changes because of climate change, but our old people knew climate change. They know what happens when ice melts and seas rise and ice freezes and seas drop. They know that stuff. We need to understand that stuff too, because our future generations, they're going to have to deal with that. We need them to be understanding how, and at the moment we're not there. And the challenge today is keeping this respect alive, not only in terms of looking after the land, but to heal the differences between people and their relationships to country. We all need to heal. And I think it's really about the only way we can heal is to untap that resilience. We've all got this resilience. That's why we're here. It's how our ancestors survived. All that memory is a part of us. We need to unlock that. Let's not just keep walking through our life, challenging ourselves with the same problems that our ancestors did. Let's evolve. That's why we're here. That's the only reason we got here.
One of the things my people used fire for was to, or smoke for that matter, if someone died, they'd smoke the place out to get rid of the bad spirit. And that's what you're doing there when you're burning off your land. Getting rid of the bad spirit. Also spreading the seeds so it will grow more. Now, another thing too was when I was out in the bush with the old man and my grandfather, before we left the area, they'd make us kids clean it all up. And they'd set fire to it, control it, make sure. And when we come back there in 2 or 3 years' time, rain, all fresh growth would be great. And so that's one of the things about fire burning.
Yeah, a lot of country needs fire. Like, it's the relationship. It's so important, and we need to bring that the right fire, like for that country. And it's really all country has different stories, and we need to understand stories, and that's why it's so important to support community to be on country, for people that burn country need to know that country. They need to know that place, and we need to build relationships so people can do that. If you want to find out more, Firesticks.au and thelivingknowledgeplace.com.au. Thank you.
Sorry to keep everyone so late, but I really hope you got something out of today. It's you can start to see how the garden is almost like the tip of the iceberg for so many stories and so many ideas. And I'm really thankful that we've really been able today to launch some of those ideas. I don't think we're trying to say where they land right now. I think we're still working that out, and we're still listening stories to work out where they will lead us. But I think it's a really important process to actually have these conversations and have these questions heard and to start tying some of this knowledge together. I'd encourage you all to come to the next symposium, which is happening at the Art Gallery Wales, looking at spectacle, manifestation and performance. And obviously keep a very close eye on the project as it starts to develop and opens up on the 17th of September. Before we come to a close today, I'd like to, John wanted to say a few words to close the day, but I'd also like to remind you all that there's a fantastic book waiting to be signed at the bookshop, and I'd encourage you all to get hold of that fantastic read. So, John, if you'd like to just finish up, that'd be great.
I think this has been a wonderful. I hope you all agree with me, because I have learned a lot myself. So, firstly, thank you very much to all the speakers. Each one was very different, but very meaningful. Thank you for making the effort. Congratulations to Jonathan for pulling it all together. You keep, even though you have skinny legs, you keep growing in my eyes. Well done. And I would just like to thank our team, and especially the education and public program team headed by Sue Saxon. So well done, everybody. And as Jonathan said, please spread the word and come to the next symposium. Thank you all. And Bruce is here to sign his book, so hurry, because the library is at 5. You've got 20 minutes. Thank you.